I'm carrying a lot of stuff up here, which is unusual for me. It is always a blessing and a treat for me to come to University Press because I always see something that's new to me. And I've been doing this for 40 plus years. Like, for example, I was pretty sure that you can take a poinsettia home with you because they're given in memory of someone you love. So you're welcome to do. I knew that. But this star word was a great thing for me, just like, and Ren knows that she can broaden my life and deepen my life just by texting me. Like I do a little hospice chaplaincy on the side, very little. She said, you know, we have these grief boxes. You can have one if you want. Oh, that was a great blessing. So twice in 1 year, University Presbyterian has blessed me. I have a long day here at UPC. This evening at 6 o'clock, I'll be preaching at the Punjabi Fellowship because their pastor Eric is on a trip to present something at a conference in Jakarta in Indonesia. And that happens a lot with Eric. So, and I know 2 languages. None of them are the languages that they speak at the service primarily. It's the same sermon, but it will be very different because some of the words I use are not familiar to people where English is their second or third or fifth language. And that's on me. Every time there's a new thing, and today is a good thing for that because Epiphany is that. Aha! A new idea, a new thing, or the revelation of the divine, or the witnessing of the divine in this temporal, profane world of ours. Now we hear the word of the Lord first from Genesis chapter 9. God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear and dread of you shall rest on every animal of the earth and on every bird of the air, on everything that creeps on the ground and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you, and just as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. Only you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. For your own lifeblood I will surely require a reckoning. From every animal I will require it, and from human beings. Each one for the blood of another. I will require a reckoning for human life. Whoever sheds the blood of a human, by a human shall that person's blood be shed. For in his own image God made humankind. And you be fruitful and multiply, abound on the earth, and multiply in it." And then, and you're going to be wondering, so how do these 2 readings connect? But I'll connect them. I'm a professional. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler From you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the wise ones and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. Here ends the reading of God's word. Thanks and praise be to God for it. So this incarnation thing, when we were little, just a little bit older than that baby that was born in Bethlehem, oh, Christmas was an exciting time. It was exhausting after the fact because you have all the, well, in this generation, when I was a kid, we didn't get a lot of presents. You hear that from the preceding generations, right? Yeah, oh, we got, here in Fresno, the thing was a new sock with an orange and then walnuts and maybe some raisins. And that was it. It's a little different nowadays. So for the little one, the whole incarnation is exhausting after the fact. You open all those presents, then you've got to play with those toys, and you've got to look happy even if you, no, you're delighted. But the incarnation is exhausting for us before, as adults, isn't it? There's this season of parties, of being gracious to people. You know, like if you work in an office with like 50 people for about, well, the season of Advent, you have to pretend like you like everyone. Hey, hi, Tom, how you doing? How's the family? Right? There's all of that goes on, and it's exhausting. Just imagine how it was for the wise ones, the scientists of their era. They're looking, the big science of the day, looking in the heavens and determining what life was going to be like, what the next day holds for us with the way that the night sky is changing, and they see something and they study it, they research it, they read all about it. And then what do? They get on their camels or whatever it was, and they follow that star. They experiment, they come up with this hypothesis, then they get all their resources together and go to see if it really is true what is happening. And they know, because Herod asks them. So when you find, oh, we know where he is, because we've done our research. And they go and they see Jesus. But you see, these are people that are really good scientists. See, they get the grant from their government. They work real hard. You know, they've studied, they learn, and they present things to the society that's good for the society. But when there's new evidence, they shift. See, they go to the other government, the leader of the government, Herod. Herod is the government. They go, Herod tells them, okay, when you find this guy, come and tell me so I can go. You do the work, that's what you're paid for, and then let me know and I will go and do my thing. But there's new evidence. They have a dream. Well, it may not be evidence according to what happens at California State University, Fresno, but for those guys, it was everything. They had this dream, they got new evidence, And they changed their mind, they changed their way, they changed their life, and they didn't go back to Herod. And this is where we hear something that brings us into the position of moving into a wise response to God engaging God's people. Because we heard in that Genesis reading the great commission of that age: be fruitful and multiply, the biological imperative. And yet we sit in churches, and all of the churches that I love deeply have very few children in it. And the people sitting in the pews look to the future and they don't see very much. And it depresses the spirit, and it moves people to think about, when do we close up shop? And one of the exciting things of coming to University Presbyterian is that every time this oldish guy shows up, something new happens in his life. And that's instructive for the rest of you. Because what happens with Jesus' arrival? I spoke initially about the shift in our engaging with the incarnation. It changes during your life, doesn't it? Christmas is celebrated differently when you're 3 years old than when you're 12 years old, than when you're 24 years old, when you're 36 years old, or when you're 87 years old, if God grants you that much breath. But the church is always seen as the bearers of tradition, but also the ones who don't change. In a world that's changing all the time, I come to church and I hear the same old songs, that same old melody. But what Jesus does is shift our understanding in a radical way. Our primary evangelistic tool for the be fruitful and multiply is have kids, drag them to church whether they like it or not, keep them there as long as possible. If it takes putting up for, not auction, making them insecure about their presence in your last will and testament, do it. Because that is your task. Be fruitful and multiply. Make sure they're in the life of the church. But Jesus changes things. It was in Matthew, not in the second chapter, but in the last chapter, that we hear about a radical shift. Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountains to which Jesus had directed them. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and said to them, all authority on heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Great Commission has shifted in a dramatic and radical way. And so there is always hope for us, isn't there? We have a story to tell. Now, Presbyterians are great study and reflection people. We have evangelism programs that we can read about, purchase, study, set up goals and objectives, and we'll say, we're done. But there is the essential aspect of participation. To be wise, to be the great scientists, the great wise ones that came from the East, passing through the palace, ending up in Bethlehem, getting new evidence and changing the next step that they took. They participated. They learned, they studied, they learned, they accumulated knowledge, They were smart, intelligent beings, but they were also wise. He said, well, if we're going to experience this, we have to go and see. So they went and they saw, and people are still talking about it to this day. There was that smart guy, smart enough that he had gathered enough resources to be called the rich young one. Goes and asks Jesus, what's the most important thing? Well, Jesus takes the 10 Commandments and opens them up, frees us up to live fully into that selfless, loving, life-affirming, life-living person that we can be. Instead of love God in these 4 or 5 ways, honor, respect your parents, and then don't do these things to maintain healthy relationships, Jesus says, love God with your whole being and love your neighbor as you love yourself. Work on loving really, really well. The great commandment, then he takes the commission, be fruitful and multiply, and shifts it and says, go therefore and make disciples of all nations. Pastor Ara, what are we going to do? We don't have any kids to hand the church off to. Do you know anyone in, let's pick a place, Orosi? I've never been to Orosi until I became executive presbyter of the Presbytery of San Joaquin. You know, there are people who live in Orosi. And not all of them know the source of their being. Not all of them know God. Not all of them know Jesus. Not all of them understand how precious they are. Not all of them are loved. Certainly not all of them are loved really well. Can we do anything about that? We can study ways to learn Spanish. That would be number one thing for me. To study, to set goals, and then to get out there and meet somebody and tell them your story. Not everyone's going to get it. Not everyone shares. But if you work at it, oh my goodness, the connections you'll make and the fuller life that you will have, and so will the person that you engage. And some of them may come to this sanctuary. Most of them won't. But you know what? That's okay. The commission is to go. The commission to the wise ones, through all their study, through their intellectual pursuits, through their experimentation by getting on their camels or horses or mules or whatever it was, to move from where they were to the place where they needed to be, to experience Epiphany, to experience the divine, to have that light bulb go off in their head, right? And it did, because they got up and went. The wise ones offer us a testimony to the radical shift that Jesus brings into our lives. To whom do I go? Whoever God places before you. I read somewhere this past week, I wrote it down and I forgot to cite from who wrote this. If study and reflection have gone into it, and we Presbyterians are really, really, really good at that. If study and reflection have gone into it, so must legwork, sweat, and opinion that is based not only on research, but on experience and participation. Oh, I turned the page and I shouldn't have. Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee. They had spent about 3 years in study and reflection. And Jesus says to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Has been given to me, says Jesus. And now he says, go therefore. And you know what those disciples did? They went. And so you and I here. They went so you and I can have the light bulb go off above our heads, so that you and I can have that same experience of Epiphany and the Epiphany. We can meet that Christ child and be transformed, where our lives are more than just fulfilling a biological imperative, but our lives are engaging with whoever God places in front of us to live fuller and richer lives, to have the one thing we have in abundance is people in our lives. Get to know more and more of them and invite them into the life that you find fulfilling. May God bless us with strength, with intelligence, but may we be wise enough to not just study and reflect, but wise enough to go and do and taste how sweet life is, especially lived together in community here at University Press, here in Fresno, on this beautiful earth. Amen.